Welcome back, Boni.
Thank you, Russell.
Yes, yeah. So thank you for that lovely insights into your childhood. It's always beautiful to hear stories because we meet each other at the stage when we are grown up, and we never really have time to go back and say, "Man, how was it growing up?" And they say that there's always a child inside us. When you talk about that, don't you feel very much pleasurable? As wow, that was a beautiful time.
It's true. It's true. I think childhood moment is one of the moments where you really get to be happy. You are not stressed by a number of things which we've made to be too important in our adult life.
Absolutely. Yeah. And reliving those memories, really, you do appreciate,
Definitely.
Yeah. So after JC and your friend had helped you to follow the academic A, but nevertheless I don't think that was still academic A when you went for the technical vocational college. But it brought you at least that.
You know what? I have got to thank my brother-in-law because at that time my brother-in-law was married to my eldest sister because they were assisting with my education at the time.
Yes.
Actually pulled me one side and said, you know what? You can continue and do a matric and you wear a tie like me. He was a senior clerk in education.
Yes.
Or you can make something meaningful of your life and get a technical skill.
Yes.
Yeah, and he said there's a technical college. You can learn mechanic, you can learn electrical, and if you want to study further, you can see as well. But you'll be having something tangible in your hand.
Wow.
So he was persuasive, and I think he did a little bit of research, and he managed to get me excited about it. So I went and I joined the technical college,
yes.
And I took then to study electricity.
Wow. And then that was heavy. Was that a heavy current, obviously?
Yeah, that was the heavy current.
Yeah.
I think the only reason that one actually dropped it was just the climate at the time, because that was 77, and of course there were winds of change that were blowing and everything, and they had casualties. So one then found themselves abandoning that electrical and being on the street for a while up until one got another opportunity.
But that means you had to leave KwaZulu-Natal and go to Eastern Cape.
Yeah, I was. The Ngangalizwe was in Eastern Cape. That's where I found out about this academic age general and academic.
Oh, I see.
And of course my brother-in-law and my older sister were staying in the Eastern Cape, so they had called me over to assist with education and relieve my mom of the burden.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it is there then that they influenced me to join the technical training.
So did you ultimately get your was it N what?
With the electrical, I just managed to get N1, and I abandoned that, and then I was on the street for a while, and then as I moved around, I saw a training college with lots of wires, and it appeared to be the Department of Post and Telecommunications in Transkei, and they were having intakes of trainees. So from there,
was that part of the old Transkei
yes.
Government homeland?
Yes. Yes, it was. So I walked in there and I said, "Hey, hello. I've studied electrical up until N1, and looking for the job."
Yeah.
and the gentleman says, "What kind of jobs?" And of course, not being trained on even looking for the job or applying for the job, so I say any job. And this gentleman hands me a broom. So I said, are you crazy? Do you look like a person that can sweep? So he says, you ask for any job. And I said, no. I mean something electrical. So he said, why don't you say so?
And this was in Umtata. Was this in Umtata?
Anyway, he invited me to come for a psychological test because it happened so that they were taking. Yeah. And I passed that, and then I was taken in as a what do you call it, a trainee telecom electrician.
And this was in Umtata, ne?
In Umtata, yes.
Yeah. Wow!
Yeah.
Look how fate works. You just needed that 1 year to experience that end one to have a little bit of to have a foot in the sector.
Yes.
And that was the beginning of your telecom journey.
That was it.
And the internship was for how long?
The internship was 3 years. It was a traineeship of 3 years. We did what they call the internal courses, introductory, then A course, B course, and C course. And those courses were actually known in the entire southern region. So if you were a telecommunication electrician, you've done A, B, and C, then you were regarded highly.
And you discovered that was you.
I discovered that was me as I grew through the job itself. I think initially it was just fun. Because there was competition, the guys with the highest qualifications, and of course with metric maths, then they would be sifted after the intro to go and do the engineering degrees. And the guys that had metric maths but did not pass highly, then they would be taken out to be trained as technicians. And the guys that got lower marks or did not have metric maths, that was like me, then would be trained as telecom electrician. So I ended up then being on the telecom electrician band due to the fact that I had not completed my metric initially.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
and did you embark?
I recovered on that a bit later when I went then for the diploma myself.
Oh, I see. So
at a later stage.
So you did get to the N levels that could give you your metric.
Yeah, I could not get into.
And
at that time there was the N levels and the Technicon ones, which was the S levels, or T1 to T3 or S1 to S4. That path as well. Yeah.
Yes, I remember those very alternative career. What do you call them? Step ladders that you.
Yes.
So did you take this the S direction?
At a later stage, I went back and I did the N4, N5, N6. Yes, and then that culminated to the National Technical Diploma, which was issued by the Department of Education.
Wow, sure. And you at that time I think you thought I'm just hopeless, But when you look at it, that is exactly what we are saying now. That stream, that direction, it's so desperately needed.
It is.
Yes. I wish I could whisper into somebody who's looking into our education to say, listen, please, after what is the equivalent of JC now? Is that grade 9?
It should be, it should be grade 9.
Or grade 8.
Yeah, grade 9.
Grade 8. I think it's grade 8. Yeah, no, it's grade 9, yeah? It's grade 9. Or 10. I think it's grade 10. It's grade 10. So, with desperate people like you, actually you could be a living example of that, although it wasn't called this then. But honestly speaking, that's what we are suffering from, because we are, that Germany right now is experiencing the oversupply of graduates, and yet they have this dual training system, which is really the pillar of their economy. But they are concerned that now there's more and more young people who just want degrees. And they are saying, no. But because they have got the avenues that you can take alternative routes, you don't have to do what they call Ed.2. You do the matric and then you follow the vocational stream. So they are still not having a crisis like we have. And I feel that if we don't intervene in what our education is feeding us, we are heading for disaster because we are busy producing people who are just theorists.
Yeah. I think that's, I agree with you. I think the relevance of the skills that are needed by the economy needs to guide, the streams that needs to be studied. And I'm saying that mindful of the other skills like problem solving, which are general skills that should be built for anybody regardless of the path they follow.
Absolutely.
But I think we made a mistake of thinking that, following an academic matric is the route to follow.
Yeah.
and that's it.
There was a time in my life where, I was influenced also by the vocational education stream because of me going to the German Chamber of Commerce here in Johannesburg. But I also, at the same time, I wanted to make sure that I also do get a degree because everybody, if you don't have it, you didn't have it. There was a time in South Africa, if you didn't have a degree, it was like, you know what, you are nothing. The time when people used to host, having a graduation party became the in thing. When somebody enrolled for a degree, the first thing he had in mind is, I can't wait to get to a point where one day I'll be graduating. And everybody will be singing that in what do you call it? Yes, in graduating. Yeah, and graduating and all your friends coming up in their regalia, and then we have a party. And it used to irritate me not because I was following a different stream, but I always knew that I would ultimately get my degree, and I did. And I never went to my graduation to receive my certificate because I just hated this thing of wearing gowns. But I understand it's very important. It's a significance. But
it's not the significance.
Yeah.
I say it's got the significance, and I think what's important is you've got to see the need for it and see where it's going to take you.
Yes, but at that time, it was going out of hand. It was a question of how many, when people are now coming, you get that, but then it's a question of who has got three, what did you call it, the belts? You put 1, 2, 3, that means you've got many degrees. Now people start saying, I only have one belt. All I has got only one belt. But I think because as black people were denied proper education, and that was UNISA was really the home of every one of us. So you have to get a degree, but and that's what I like about UNISA students. You almost knew that 80% of them are working. So whatever they are learning, they are adding to what they are doing. So I think we have to have a balance, and because of that, the number of technician artisans started going down. Because it was various pressure coming from the society that you have to have a degree, So I'm glad you and we're going to talk about the fact that you now have established your own ICT Academy, and I'm ahead of my time myself, but I really want to know what are the things you are addressing and how are you balancing these dynamics that are sometimes society pressures, and then the economy saying, I want this, but it doesn't get that. The education refusing to change, just continue baking these graduates who become unemployed.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Brasem. I think the key issue is the ICT itself has got a number of legs, and you know what, there are jobs that can be done by graduates. There are jobs that can be done by the guys that have actually left school without finishing secondary school. And I think also one of the beauties that came with I think the SITA landscape and with those unit standard modules and all that, even though they did not get to be kept for much longer, is the set of qualifications that could be used for learnerships. And secondly, the advantage of the unit standard-based qualifications created the flexibility. This is one of the flexibility that I actually used when I was still in the corporate world. As an example, we would be able to get at some point an engineer. You got him and he knows all the algorithms and everything and he can deal, but he has never seen a switch. And at one point you're going to need to have him to plan the deployment of the network. He can be able to calculate the traffic, budgeting and all the things that he needs to do. But in actual effect, in terms of just planning, in terms of the floor height that's going to be required, the type of air conditioning, they didn't have those skills. So we had to get back and say, pull back from the vocational qualifications they've got and pull back modules that will be able to develop the skills, as an example.
Wow. We're going to come back to that. I want you to share with us, after that, just take us through your journey, corporate journey then. I'm very fascinated. I didn't even know that you started in the homeland of Transcard. So take us through the journey. Let me not deny the listeners by talking too much. Let me allow you to to take us through your corporate journey.
Okay. After completing then the traineeship as a telecom electrician, then I got an opportunity to just come and do a short course on electronics with Siemens here in Pretoria, and it was during those apartheid days. But attending that course actually literally opened up my eyes about the worth, because when I was in that course, I was actually offered something like 4 jobs.
Wow.
Like, one of them was in Namibia, but Namibia was banning still in those days, so I was scared of the bombs and everything.
Yeah.
Others were, to assist Siemens so that they can maintain their switches in Mozambique. So when I got to go back to Umtata, I literally was aware of what I'm worth. Like, wow, I can walk tall.
Wow.
And then after that, seeing that, okay, the route was not too clear, so I thought, okay, I want to go back home. Then I went back to Durban. And of course, the then Department of Post and Telecommunication, the South African one, would not necessarily commit whether they would employ me or not, and there was something they called gentleman's agreement. So I had to resign without that and just go back home with just the confidence that, I think I've got what it takes, I'll get another job. And I think I stayed about 3 months without the job. Then I got the job with the South African Department of Post and Telecommunications. And it is then that I actually then was on the electronic repair session, dealing with the electronic teleprinters and all. People do not even know teleprinters. It shows how old I am.
Is it part of telex? What do you
Yeah. It was for telex. Like the banks, and they used to use telexes to transfer, to do telegraphic money orders and all those things in those days. And
you make me laugh, because if we were to tell the younger generation when we entered the world of work what we used to call top-notch technology.
And that was the top technology at the time. Like, I dealt with the telex machines and also the telegraph transmission and networks. So like we were the top guys in terms of technology in those days. But you can laugh now in terms of
do you think? I mean, you talk about telegraph. That was the emergency. They tell you, hey, there is telegraph. It's an emergency. It has been transmitted instantaneously. That was our WhatsApp.
And from there, then I got the bursary to go and study and do my N4 to N6, which was then I achieved my diploma. And then I came back and I grew up through the ladder to be the operations manager. I think we were called chief technical officers those days. There was a difference between the chief technical officer today and the chief technical officer that day. It's an equivalent of an operations manager. And after that, then the realization came that, okay, look, to become a control technical officer, you needed to be an engineer. And I'm still young, so it meant I've hit the ceiling, and I've seen around me some technicians, white or black, that have gone gray and they're just technicians. So I then made a conscious decision that maybe it's time to visit the university. So I registered with UNISA. And of course, having not finished the matric, but having grown through the vocational side, I had to get what they call it, matric exemption. There was a conditional exemption, yeah. So I had to get a conditional exemption with a view that I'll get my full exemption once I've finished my degree. So finishing the degree will give me my matric exemption and my degree.
Wow.
So, but we followed that route, and I think again it was one of the things that shows that if you want to pursue something, there are ways that all of a sudden locks do open, even though you did not know they could be open, because I was just trying with UNISA to sort of find out what can be done, because I was scared of the ceiling. So
So you studied while you were working?
I was studying while I was working. I did part-time my BCom degree, my junior degree.
It was a BCom degree?
Yeah.
Wow.
Bachelor of Commerce General. I majored in business management and what do you call it, economics.
That was forward-looking, yeah?
In actual fact, there was an element of forward-looking and an element of confusion, because you asked me earlier if I had followed psychology. I was fascinated with the psychology. So my BCom General consisted of a wide number of options, because I was confused. On one end, I wanted to be an ICT consultant. On another end, I wanted to be the psychologist, industrial psychologist. And on another one, I aspired to managing. And then that's how business management came in.
Wow.
So it was a question of, we'll figure it out as we go through the degree, which is going to be the ultimate route, And then I grew up to be the supervisor, the regional manager.
And this is now at Post and Telecommunications Department.
And it translated, it converted to telecom, so I became the area manager in the telecom days.
Oh, yes, you know something that is very much historical, that is heritage of South Africa, we need to share with people, because not everybody knows actually the current telecom used to be the Post and Telecommunications Department of South African government.
Yes.
It's just, people just see it as a company now, but that's where it comes from.
That's where it comes from.
And it came with people like you into the current, so you worked for that structure and then the current telecom.
Telecom, yes. And in those days as well, they invested a lot in training and ensuring that there is skills pipeline in the country. Because every year they had an intake of telecom electricians, trainee telecom electricians, trainee technicians, trainee engineers. So every year,
and then you will all go to that famous telecom college.
Of course, it was the apartheid days. So there was the college for blacks, which was in Soshanguve. There was for whites, which was in Olifantsfontein, and I think the colors were somewhere in Cape Town, and the Indians were in Phoenix and Durban, typically.
Oh, look at that expensive model.
Yes, it was expensive, but it was separation at all costs.
Sure. Goodness me. And then when you collide at the market, you will all have the same qualities.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
But you will find in each one of those colleges there will be white lecturers.
Yes. Yes.
Hey, but apartheid was just a stupid thing. Eh?
And of course, when we came to the work as well, you were both called technicians, but you had the lowest scale. The others will come in at a higher scale. There was no such things as an equal start.
Yeah. Goodness me. Yeah. But anyway, it's our history. We just cannot stop keeping on referring to it, but it just shows you how stupid it was. But yeah, those days. But what I wanted to say was, it is a very important part of the history that people must have. That we had the post and telecommunications that gave birth to telecom, and now we are having to establish a telecommunications department in the new South Africa. You understand? The telecommunications department, which cannot own telecom, but can regulate, but can regulate telecom.
Can regulate, that's true.
It's like Pirates giving birth to
set policies for the industry.
It's like Orlando Pirates giving birth to Kaiser Chiefs, and now Kaiser Chiefs regulating Orlando Pirates. The Buccaneers and Marcos will kill me for this. I'm just using that as an example, but good stuff. But it's a very interesting history. And then the Siemens that trained you, that was that old Siemens in Waterloo, ne?
I was trained by the one, there was one in Poynton House in Central Town.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then at that time, the Siemens technology was basically the whole post and telecommunications department of South Africa.
Yeah, the exchanges were provided for by Siemens. The telephones and telegraph equipment were mainly Siemens,
Yo, you are such a... sometimes I feel that we don't honor you guys enough. Since this country, I spoke to somebody yesterday and I said that the humility of Africans sometimes become a disadvantage because we are too humble and not to showcase what we have. And I'm sure you are not the only one that transitioned with that old order who are still hitting high in the current order. But we don't really come to you to say, man, hey, how did this used to happen? And with you is even quite amazing from from a homeland department and bulldoze yourself into the old South African telecommunications department, came up with telecom, and I know you're still going to tell the story, but I'm just saying that sometimes we have gems among ourselves and we just don't actually bring them up to induct people into this. When you take over the company, you say, look, I take it over from here, I'm not interested in what happened before. And then as you're running the company, things keep on coming out of the woods. Where is this one coming from? Where is this? They say, yeah, no, it has always been here. You didn't want to know where we come from.
Yeah. No, you see, this is the thing. The simplest thing is wherever you land, you need to know a little bit about the history. And you need to learn from that history in terms of what has been tried, what has not, why did it fail or did it succeed, what made it succeed or fail. And then you put on your own new thinking and strategy to say, okay, now that I've done this analysis and I'm here, this is how we're going to move forward. And you take that which works from the previous. I think some of the things is we work too hard to try and impress such that we end up duplicating and maybe recreating things that have been created already. Yeah, because we want to claim glory at all costs.
Hey, human being is the enemy of himself or herself sometimes. But I'm glad we are talking because I I think the reason why we also want to have this series of discussions, that we take you from where you come from, is also to create that awareness that sometimes we have answers among ourselves.
That's true.
Great. So now you're working for Telkom. When did it transition into, because it's just immediately post 94 that you guys were transitioning into the new Telkom?
It was actually just before 94. I think it was 1991, if I'm not mistaken. I think so. Yeah, I think it was 1991. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Yeah.
And but you completed your BCom, and did it bring shift in your position in the company?
There were benefits in doing it, because remember that from being then the operational manager, and then I moved to enterprise development and all those things. Then when I was the strategy planning, there was a post that was advertised in human resources, and which was then human resource executives for training and development.
Yes.
So I looked at this and I said, no, hang on, I have learned I did industrial psychology, and I also learned how to manage a training business, because one of the modules in business management was management of training.
Yes.
So I looked at this and I said, no, they are not looking for somebody, an educator. They are looking for somebody to manage an institution.
Yes. Yes.
So I actually then put that to good use, and I applied, got through the interview, and was successful.
So you became the training and development manager.
From technical and corporate strategy to human resources.
Wow, for the group.
Yes.
You became the training and development manager, reporting into the HR director.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes. I was, that was the...
Look at that journey. If you were asked at the beginning of being at Umtata Technical that one day you will become the training and development manager of Telkom, you will have said, you know what, try somewhere else. We're saying these things because none of us will have believed who we became if we were to be asked then when we started, isn't it?
Yeah. I actually use that, Brasem, to even motivate the youngsters today to sort of say, what you have initially studied, it does not necessarily mean that is the beginning and the end of who you're going to be. As you go through life, you're going to learn of the new skills, you're going to learn of the new opportunities. And what's important is for you to understand whether you've got it in you, whether you would enjoy doing that particular thing. And then if you think you can enjoy it and you've got the capability, then you go for it. So don't limit yourselves simply because you studied electronics. Now you go around, even if there is no employment in electronics, you do not necessarily take a detour. You know?
Yeah. And then something that is very insightful about your journey, which I feel we need to emphasize, is the fact that you were never really despondent with due to the fact that you did not go and do your matric. You actually took an alternative path, and you proceeded until you converged into academic. That your friend at this high school at the JC advised, tried to explain to you that academic A, this is it. You ultimately you met your academic A stream. And that gave you the entry into management terrain of a company built on the technology that you learned earlier on. I'm sure anybody else would have come with the BCom qualification or even the human resources qualification or training and development qualification, but no experience of Telkom's environment. They will have battled, isn't it?
That would have been the case. They would have been maybe sitting and theorizing, but in the theory needs to always be backed by practice and the skill. So there's advantage to either way. Yeah.
I shared with somebody that about something called Wirtschaft engineer, which in English is actually economic engineer, which you had become because you came up with technical. You were not engineer, but you were technical qualification, and then you went and acquired management qualification or business economics qualification. When you combine the two, it makes you that economic technical person.
True.
Which is what actually we so much need. And for how long then were you training and development manager at Telkom?
I think it was I think it must have been about 12 years.
Yeah.
But it was broken because I took 1 year and I was an expert and I went to one of our Telkom subsidiaries in Nigeria, and I was back to line as an executive in the CEO's office, assisting with the turnaround strategy.
So you worked in Nigeria for a while?
Worked in Nigeria for the whole year.
Wow. We're in Lagos?
Yeah, in Lagos. And we moved and we went to Abuja. We opened a number of branches for that subsidiary.
Wow. And what happened to the subsidiary now?
Unfortunately, it was disposed of. It fell victim of restructuring and right-sizing of the company.
But from your personal...
It sought to grow.
Wow, okay. And from personal point of view, how was that year in Nigeria?
I normally refer to it as an MBA in its own because you had to learn a completely different culture. You had to learn how the fellow brothers use the economy to do what they had to do. You learn about the negative impacts of corruption. You learn a lot of things. It was an MBA by itself.
Wow. And did you go there with your family?
No. We used to come regularly. We had an opportunity to come back every month.
I see.
Yeah, for maybe 2 to 3 days or something like that.
But they had the opportunity to visit you also there? They
also had the opportunity to visit, and they visited sometimes.
During my Motorola days, I used to look after the Nigerian side from HR point of view. And we had a lot of expatriates from South Africa to Nigeria, and almost all of them did not take their families with. But it was they all agree, they will all tell you that that's an experience that you can never get anywhere.
No, it's an experience of a lifetime.
And I'm sure the MTN people that used to do that as well will agree. It's a totally different environment, but very dynamic in its own right in terms of complexities of how to do business.
Yeah.
Wow. And that also that type of experience, that's something that one wouldn't easily just assume that you have it. And for the continent, that is very important. Yeah. So now you came back and then they said, man, you have seen the best in the continent. We want you to work with the CEO in strategy department.
Yeah, I actually, when I got there, we were working on turnaround, but here at home, I had actually worked as a senior manager at corporate strategy department.
Oh, I see.
And yes. And I went in there initially as part of management development. I think I was lucky to be amongst those that were identified for accelerated development and as the company sought to transform. So as part of that, I ended up in strategy, and I guess maybe they saw the potential, and then I was then employed as a senior manager still there instead of just being a trainee. I only left that corporate strategy to then join the HR.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. All right. Am I right to say that you only work for one company?
I have only worked for one company, but multiple divisions.
Oh, it's not many people who can say that.
Yeah, I've worked for multiple divisions, from being a technician on the road to being a supervisor, to being introduced to packet switching and moving on to enterprise development under marketing, going to corporate strategy, ending up in Asia.
Wow. And then am I right that to say that the telecom college, which then became one, was the substructure of the human resources?
Yes, it was the substructure of human resources.
And you ended up also heading the college, right?
Yes, as human resources executive, learning and development, I was then heading the telecom colleges. They had the college in almost in every telecom province or telecom region, there were two in Gauteng, one in Olifantsfontein, one in Boysens. There was one in Durban, there was one in PE, one in Cape Town, one in Bloemfontein. Yeah. So they all reported to my structure, and they have, of course, campus managers, and they were all fully staffed as well.
I can imagine.
So it was almost like one big corporate university.
Sure. So I can imagine the span of control that you were looking after was very big. How many people reported to you directly?
When I initially joined, but Telkom still had a lot of people at that time. I had something like 238 technical trainers. But at that time, Telkom had over 59,000 employees.
Sure.
You know. So,
huge.
but at one point, then restructuring occurred, things were joined. That number increased to about 300, and then it reduced as technology came in, and we had to retrain, and the total staff numbers of the company were also reducing. So equally, the training staff members also reduced in numbers.
And that human resources responsibility, was that your last official position at Telkom?
And that was my last official position at Telkom.
So all in all, how many years you worked for telecommunications, including the old post and telecommunication department?
I think it should be about 36 years, if I'm not mistaken. I had 33 years with Telkom proper, and 3 years as a trainee. And so, yeah, it's about 36 years.
Sure. And you have seen all the transitions of technology and...
I've seen all major transition from analog to digital, transition from various older networks, which they called legacy. You know, I can stand now and argue when something calls its legacy, because today's next generation, tomorrow will be legacy and all that. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that's unbelievable. And you will you say that the current Telkom did very well in retaining you call it the legacy, but the heritage that it was given as a responsibility from the old post and telecommunications to where it is now? Obviously, it's now a SOE, but obviously it took over all that was there.
I think although of late there are more challenges, but of course all other telcos have undergone the same challenges or similar challenges. I would say that they kept the legacy for quite a long time of a contributing to the country and enabling the development in the country.
Yes.
Be it at times forced through regulations or willingly, but they did, because even today, we can talk of a cellular network, we can talk of whatever, but in each and every one of them, there is a component of a fixed line, be it fiber, be it microwave, and all those things, typical things that get offered by the telecommunication for a long haul. They will still be there. So they are the enablers. There was at one time that you would sit and say in every company that you would actually see, there's likely in the IT department you have a person that says, I actually had a bursary from Telkom, or I spent some years of training with Telkom somehow. So I think they did make a massive contribution, particularly in the human resource development arena. And also developing the communication industry.
Is there a Telkom museum?
There was a Telkom museum, but I don't think it exists anymore. But there was a Telkom museum.
Wow.
It was a very exciting area because you would see the switches, you would see the satellite communication, a whole lot of things. But sadly, I don't think it exists anymore. But I'm subject to correction.
Well, okay. It can be put together again, because I'm sure somewhere there's some gadgets sitting in somebody's home. Anyway, let's hold it there now. Now I'm excited about the next part of our discussion, because I'm going to talk. I want us to talk specifically about how you transitioned into self-employment, running your own academy, ICT Academy. And let's tell people more about what you have done with these many years of experience in the form of your Supreme ICT Academy, right?
Okay.
Lovely. We'll be back. Sure.
Thank you.